I've been using the Canon R50V for about 30 days now, and honestly, this little camera has actually really surprised me. There is a lot to like here, and a couple of things that let this camera down as well. So let's cover it all. Let's dive right in. So this is the Canon R50V, and this is a 24 megapixel APS-C camera that is clearly designed with video creators and vloggers in mind. And it's got a really unique design for Canon. It's very compact and it's a very stripped back design, and I think clearly aimed at video shooters. And it actually reminds me of something that Sony might put out, something like the ZV-E1 in its general design ethos. It's a very, very light camera. It's only 370 grams with a battery and memory card in it, so that makes it ideal for travel and vlogging. And I think Canon has definitely really leaned into that with certain features on this camera, like the fully articulating 3-inch screen. It has a tally lamp on the front and even a front-facing record button. And these are all great touches for self-shooters and things like that. The button layout on the R50V is actually also really solid. Everything is in within easy reach, and there's plenty of room on this camera for customization. Most of the key settings that you're going to want to adjust have a dedicated button, which I love. That just makes shooting with this camera feel very quick and very intuitive. One of my favorite features on this camera design-wise is definitely this rear scroll wheel, because it's not just for scrolling, it also works like a D-pad, so each direction can be mapped to certain things like ISO, white balance, autofocus, and more. So it's a small touch, but it actually really speeds things up when you're shooting on the go, and it even just makes things like navigating the menu a whole lot easier as well. And on that topic, this camera also has a pretty stripped back, very simple, easy to use menu as well that's really sort of focused on important video settings. So I really like that as well for a video first camera. And if you pick up the kit lens with this camera, you can take advantage of the built-in power zoom function on this camera. So there's a rocker on the front just near the record button that'll allow you to zoom in and out. So I really like that, and hopefully we see more lenses on APS-C that are going to allow you to take advantage of that function on this camera. There are a couple of downsides with the R50V though. I would say that the build in general does feel a little bit plasticky. I'm also not really a fan of the placement of the on and off switch. It's taken me a little while to get used to this. There's also no viewfinder, and we only have a single card slot. But honestly, when you consider the price of this thing, it's only $650 in the US for the body and about £700 here in the UK. It's hard to be too picky about those things. Canon have clearly made a couple of trade-offs with this camera to keep it nice and affordable. I will say though, a big one for me is that I wish that the grip on this camera was a little bit more substantial, because I just, even with smaller lenses, never really feel like I've got a secure hold of this camera because it's so small. It feels even smaller in the hand than the Powershot V1. Like, just holding this now, I know I've got a really secure grip of this, but I never really feel like that with the R50V. I always feel like I might drop it. So that's not great, especially when using larger lenses. But for some people, the general size of this camera is going to really suit them, and it might not be a problem for you. But let's talk about image quality now, because yes, Canon have made a couple of compromises to make sure that this hits a certain price point, but I would definitely say that image quality is not one of them, because this little camera has really impressed me in the image quality department. It can shoot 4K full width oversampled from 6K up to 30p, and it does it all in 10-bit, and the footage looks really clean from this camera. It's sharp and way better than I expected for a camera in this price range. It honestly just reminds me just of my R6 Mark II or something like that. I would never guess that this was a crop sensor camera. And I tested it with a range of lenses, both APS-C and full frame RF options, and I got great results from this camera across the board. And the footage out of this camera just looks fantastic. It is sharp with great color and contrast, and it honestly just punches well above its weight in terms of the size of this thing and the price of this thing. I shot everything in C-Log3, and the files are just super clean and really, really easy to grade. Skin tones come out beautifully with very minimal effort, which is a big win for a camera like this if you're doing a lot of quick turnaround social media content. So my only other experience with a Canon RF APS-C camera was the R7. which was a great camera, but back then when I tried it out, there really wasn't that many lenses that could really keep up with that very demanding sensor. But I found with the R50V though, every lens that I've tried on this thing just seems to perform really well. One of my absolute favorite pairings with this camera was the RF 24mm 1.8, because it just keeps the setup pretty compact, but at the same time, you're getting some lens stabilization, and it also delivers just a nice bit of background separation in video as well. I also love the RF 16 to 28 2.8. That works really well on this camera as well, and it's great for wider shots. I did also grab this 14 to 30 kit lens with my R50V, and it's actually a pretty solid lens, especially for just like casual vlogging. You don't get the same depth or like subject separation as you do with faster lenses like the 16 to 28. I'll show you a side by side here. But honestly, still, it surprised me. It's sharp, it's very lightweight, and the zoom range is very practical for video. So yeah, as a video option in general, I found this R50V to be a pretty clear step up from something like even the Powershot V1. If I show you some clips side by side, I think that the R50V gives you a more organic image, whereas the Powershot just tends to look a little bit sharper and more video-ish. It is more convenient as a camera, don't get me wrong, but I think the trade-off is that it looks more video-y, and you've just got a lot more options when it comes to dialing in a look, thanks to that interchangeable lens mount that you get on the R50V. A big downside though is that while the R50V can shoot 50 or 60p slow motion, it can only do it in a 1.5 times crop, and that's on top of the APS-C crop already, so that's a bit of a shame, especially if you're trying to keep things wide when shooting slow-mo. But to be fair, as you can see here, the 60p footage actually, despite the crop, still looks really good, I think. So it is a trade-off. It's not a deal breaker for me because I think this camera is definitely aimed at people that are going to be shooting mainly in 24, 25 or 30p. Autofocus also was another strong point. It just felt snappy and reliable and very similar to what I'm used to from say my Canon R8 or R6 Mark II, which is impressive when you consider the price of this thing. And it's definitely a bit of a step up over the Powershot V1 in the autofocus department as well. Subject and eye detection just worked really well across all of the lenses that I tried, even including third-party lenses like the Sigma 18 to 50. So no issues at all with autofocus. Guys, before we continue, I've got to let you know that this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Now, as a photographer, having a website that showcases your work is a must in my opinion, and it just doesn't get any easier than Squarespace because there's no coding or design skills needed. Most of the things you're going to want to do are as simple as drag and drop, and now Squarespace even have amazing AI tools like Design Intelligence or Blueprint AI, which all help you create a personalized website in just a couple of easy steps. And of course, there's the fully customizable photo galleries that are just perfect for showing off your portfolio to potential clients. Squarespace also has fantastic e-commerce tools, and it makes setting up your own online store an absolute breeze. So you can start selling in no time, and you can also handle many different types of payments seamlessly, all thanks to Squarespace Payments. So if you're ready to get started, head on over to squarespace.com/jamesreader and use code jamesreader for 10% off your first domain or website. Dynamic range was also another pleasant surprise with this camera, because even in challenging lighting situations where I underexposed my subject, the R50V held up really well, and the shadows didn't get overly noisy. You just got to make sure that you slightly overexpose the footage. Definitely, I found that that's when you're going to get the best results and the cleanest shadows with this camera. I even compared it side by side with my R6 Mark II in a pretty tough scene when it comes to dynamic range, and honestly, when pushing and pulling the shadows, the results between these two cameras were surprisingly close. So there is a lot of latitude in the footage from this camera, and a lot more than I expected from a budget crop sensor body like this. It really held its own up against a much more expensive camera, and I just think in general, when you look at these clips side by side, the R50V gives you a really pleasing image. Low light, however, is definitely where the R50V starts to show its limitations. With most of my Canon cameras, I'm pretty comfortable shooting at high ISOs, and they usually handle it really well. But I did find with the R50V, I wasn't too happy with the results from this thing pushing it anywhere beyond ISO 3200. As you can see, I feel like once you go higher than that, the image gets too noisy really, and it starts to lose detail as well. I compared it to my R6 Mark II, and at similar ISOs, the R6 just pulls way ahead. And there's no surprise there, but then I even compared it to the Powershot V1 with its smaller sensor. It still managed to stay a little bit cleaner than the R50V at these higher ISOs. So I think that puts the R50V's performance into perspective when it comes to low light. Another downside is the R50V doesn't have in-body stabilisation, so you're going to have to rely on either digital IS or the optical stabilisation from a lens with this camera. So I did generally pair this camera with lenses that have optical stabilisation, like say the 24mm 1.8. And when using those kinds of lenses, I was actually pretty impressed with how steady you could get footage to look from this camera. Coming from the R8, I'm used to having no IBIS and relying on optical IS, and I actually like the look of optical IS, so I didn't really feel like I missed the IBIS when using this camera at all. I also found the kit lens to be a pretty solid option for things like vlogging and self-filming in general. I think I actually prefer the look of this setup as well compared to say the Powershot V1. You still don't get a ton of depth, but I do like the look you get from this lens for vlogging. I was also really looking forward to using some Sigma APS-C lenses with this camera for video, but I will say that the lack of built-in stabilization on the Sigma offerings is a bit of a drawback for me, but I did use the Sigma 18 to 52.8 with just digital stabilization, and I was surprised. I actually thought that the results were pretty decent, and I usually avoid using digital stabilization at all costs, but overall I think that the digital stabilization on the R50V is actually pretty usable. I just avoid any kind of walking or vlogging shots with digital IS, and I would mainly use it for things like static shots or just subtle movements, and in that case it does a pretty good job and makes up for that lack of IBIS. And the crop when using digital IS isn't too drastic either, so it's definitely a useful feature that you're going to probably rely on a lot when using this camera. And despite the R50V's tiny body, I couldn't get this camera to overheat. Even after recording an hour and a half of 4K on a pretty warm day here in the UK, the body did feel slightly warm, but I didn't even get a warning or anything like that, or any signs that this camera was struggling. So that was pretty reassuring for anyone who wants to use this camera for long form recording. But that said, I couldn't actually get much beyond 90 minutes of continuous recording before the battery gave out. So I think that's an indicator that the battery life in this camera isn't really that great, especially compared to my other cameras where I can easily get over 2 hours of 4K continual recording before even having to worry about low battery. Now this may be a video focused camera, but it actually puts out some seriously good image quality when it comes to photos too. And I think we finally got some great lens options to take advantage of that as well. I used the Sigma 18 to 52.8 for these shots, and I found this lens to be really sharp right across the zoom range. And I also love pairing this with the 24mm 1.8, which is a favorite lens of mine for APS-C. And it's perfect for environmental portraits, giving you a nice little bit of background separation, and it is tack sharp on this sensor as well. But if you're willing to throw a premium lens on this camera like I did, I put the RF35mm 1.4 on this and shot some portraits, and it really showed me what this sensor is capable of, because the images are super sharp, very, very detailed, and they have that classic Canon color. So I would absolutely take this camera traveling with me, and I'd be really confident that this thing can handle not only video, but photo as well. So it is early days for me still with the Canon R50V, but so far I have been really impressed by this camera. Just based on image quality alone, this $600 camera punches way above its weight, and it delivers results that I think genuinely hold up next to some of my much more expensive cameras. And it makes this a no-brainer for people that mainly shoot 4K 24, 25 or 30p. And it does it all in a tiny, lightweight body. It's actually really fun to use and is a very capable camera when it comes to both video and photo work as well. I also love the design of this camera. It is a fresh direction for Canon, and I'd honestly love to see this kind of body design style carried over into something full frame, like say an R8V, for example, that would be an amazing camera if they could make it compact and really stripped down and intuitive to use like this. But it's not perfect, obviously. You've got that cropped 60p, there's no IBIS. Rolling shutter is also not great, and neither is its low light capabilities. But for the price and for what this camera is designed to do, so vlogging and content creation and just casual run and gun shooting, I think the Canon has absolutely nailed it, and there is a ton of value packed into this camera. I'd just love to see a few more premium RFS lenses designed with video in mind, especially with optical stabilisation. That new Sigma 17-50 1.8 looks amazing, but I think we really need more high quality RFS glass with IS. So I'd love to see Canon make an L series version of that lens themselves with both stabilisation and a power zoom feature, because I think that all it takes is one great lens like that to make RFS as an ecosystem way more attractive to pro videographers. But what do you guys think of the R50V? Is it a camera that you would consider picking up, or maybe you've already got it? In that case, I'd love to hear how you're getting on with this camera so far. Leave me a comment down below. But that's it from me so far. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.